Hello Animorphs fans and welcome back to the Animorphs universe. Today we're looking at this, Chris Grine's adaptation of Book 4, The Message. This is currently available for pre-order and it's due to have a worldwide release, or for most places worldwide. What does that even mean, Adam? It's due to release on the 5th of December, so you have time to pre-order this and get it for Christmas. I'm going to give you a review where I'm not going to show you too many pictures, I'll show you select ones. But I'm going to save the spoilery pictures for you to go see. I'm not going to show you pictures of Axe, for example, because of course you probably know the message and you know that Axe is in this. First time we see Axe, he's in this book. I'm not going to show you pictures, you're just going to have to go pre-order it yourself to find him. Firstly, and I've covered this before in my preview video, the cover. It's not great. I don't know why this cover was chosen. I've sort of got more of an idea now, having seen this book, and as we go through this review, I'll explain why. And it's one of the bad parts of this book. It's very hit and miss, this one. Very hit and miss. There's some brilliant bits, brilliant adaptations, and there's also some bits that are questionable. The usual art style returns. You know, if you've read Chris Grine's adaptation so far, you're familiar, okay? You're familiar with the designs and whatnot, so the characters, you know, Marcus' hair's gotten a bit longer, which is, yeah, I agree with that, but by book 10 that should be cut, Chris Grine. You gotta make sure you cut that at book 10. He will, because it's part of the book. I'm not gonna cover the plot of the book. If you wanna do that, go watch my review of the actual book itself, which I'll put at the end of this video. Besides which, probably 95% of you watching this will already be Animorphs fans who are familiar with the plot of this. So I'm just gonna cover the pros and cons of this, sort of in in a book order. So rather than just whack with all the pros and then whack with all the cons, I'm going to take it in order. Firstly, I love this inset bit, Cassie falling into the dark depths, which I think applies to Cassie's character in general. She starts off in the nice blue area, and then gradually over the course of the series she falls into the dark area where everything's weird and mysterious. I just like that initial inset picture. That's as far as spoilerish picture things are concerned. So we start in the squirrel bit, and this is one of the worst parts of this adaptation, I think. Not so much from an experienced Animorphs fan point of view, because I know what's going on, but if a new reader picked this up for the first time, I think they'd be confused. We don't get the inner monologue that Cassie has, where she's saying, there's birds that are being taken and disappearing. And I don't know what's going on. Any new reader who comes across this who's not familiar with the plot sees Cassie waking up in the middle of the night and just for seemingly no apparent reason morphing squirrel and running around her barn. And then finds a fox and says, aha, there's our mysterious bird killer. But she'd never mentioned bird killers before that, so it just seems to come out of nowhere. It's explained afterwards, but I'm thinking from the perspective of someone who doesn't know this story. That's going to confuse them. I will say though, I've talked about Cassie's barn before, where I mentioned it looks like a medical facility. It looks too clean, and I wasn't a great fan. I'm so happy to say that the barn looks like a barn in this one. And I'm not going to show you pictures, you can find that out for yourself, but it looks like Cassie's barn in this one. It looks like it looks in my head, so excellent, I'm happy with that. And it's not the only time where Chris Grine's adaptation has made something look the way it looks in my head. For example, the scene after the first at-sea adventure, where Cassie visits Marco at his apartment, the apartment complex is almost like picture perfect to what I saw in my head. Everything about it was like, that's exactly what I saw, and that made me really happy, so I'm happy with that particular adaptation. We found Donald Trump. He's wearing a fake mustache. That's, I looked at him and I thought straight away, is that an attempt at Donald Trump with a fake mustache? Also, there's the, who's that guy from Dragon Ball Z? the master one. The one that does nothing during Dragon Ball Z. That guy there. Oh, Master Roshi, that's it. Master Roshi and Donald Trump have found the Andalite wreckage bit. Also on this page, I love what he's done with Jake. I love how he's given... Where's the best example? He's given him a baseball cap and he's wearing it back to front. Yeah, I never saw Jake like that, but I'm looking at that now thinking, yeah, actually I can see Jake wearing a baseball cap the wrong way around. It is the 90s after all. One of the best scenes in this book, and it took me by surprise, and I'm not going to show you pictures, you'll have to find out for yourself, is the scene at the beach where they end up morphing Trout, you know, going down to the beach and the controls come up. That was the best sequence in the book for me, which is surprising. Just the way he drew it, the background, the angles. I think Chris Grine did a wonderful job with that scene, and that really stood out. Whereas in the books, that scene was just sort of there and it did its job, but it wasn't spectacular. Chris Grine knocks that particular scene out of the park in this adaptation. Also then, we get the dolphins, and they're named after the Friends character, and I thought it's too soon. We've just lost, God rest his soul, we have lost Matthew Perry, and yeah, it's too soon, Chris Grine. How dare you write them with such names, even though they were originally called that in the original books, and you wrote this before Matthew Perry died. Still, how dare you? That's a good panel of Marco. I will show you like little pictures like that. I'm just not going to show you like the major spoilery stuff. I also like the bridge that he puts in the park where they are before they set out in their dolphin morphs. By the way, there are a few times he changes the text in this book. It's like with the other ones. It's few and far between. It doesn't have much of an effect on anything that goes on in the story. So that's just. Cassie's dream sequences are pretty nifty. I'm alright with them. I'm alright with how he's done the dream sequences where Axe is calling out and Cassie and Tobias hear it. The way he draws that or illustrates that is, I think, pretty good. I think he's made a good choice there. Same with when the whales are talking. You know, when Cassie's talking to the great ones. What Chris Grine does, he puts a tint over those panels, and I think it distinguishes it in a simple but effective way. So he's made some good choices on how to visually show us some of these more subtle things. Lila, what are you eating? So apart from the first scene where the confusing squirrel stuff comes in, the first third or so of this book is absolutely fine. In fact, I think there's some really good stuff in there. He really brings it to life. But then we hit the middle of the book, and I noticed an issue. This book is very blue, isn't it? So on the front cover you got all this blue, on the back it's all blue. The Animorphs, of course, are morphing dolphin, which are very grey creatures, and he draws them as grey creatures. There's a picture of the Friends dolphins in the water park, and yeah, he gives them, they're basically just grey animals. As soon as we get into the ocean, which is a big chunk of the last half of this book, I don't think he makes the right choice, because you've got half the book of grey dolphins flying around, and all of the background, well, near enough all the backgrounds in these underwater panels are a white to black gradient, which comes across as largely grey. So a whole massive chunk of this book is basically just 50 Shades of Grey, the Animorphs version. It's just grey, 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 and it just doesn't stand out. I don't know why he's not used like the blues on the front and the back, because I think that would have brought the dolphins out and the sharks. But no, it's just everything is very, very grey. And halfway through this section, it just started to fly over my head because nothing stood out on page. It just looked a bit bland. The only moment of colour we really get in this massive section is when he applies the whales are talking tint. But then it just goes back to being all grey again. The the image of Marco having been bitten in half is... I think it's alright. I think he's done a pretty fine job with that. I think he put the gash a bit too close to the tail. I thought it was more split in half, like more to the centre of the body. But that's just a very nitpicky thing on my part. I think he's actually done a pretty fine job with Marco's unfortunate being sliced in half incident. We follow that bit with the bit at Marco's apartment, and it's a very detailed background, and I think it's better for it. And what I've noticed about Chris Grine's stuff is he's very picky about which backgrounds he likes to fill in, like do a lot of detail on. So I'll show you a quick example here. So you got Marco, and you can see all the apartment block in the background, and he's given it a lot of detail. There's a lot of detail in there. The apartment scene isn't exactly like the biggest scene in the book, so it feels strange that so much attention is given to the background of that scene. Almost every panel, he's included like details, like he's gone in there and actually filled it out. But then in other scenes, which are, you'd think there'd be more focus on the background, he just does the black and white, he just does a gradient. And usually it's all right. So, for example, when characters are talking, just, you know, having a gradient background is absolutely fine because you're concentrating on the words. But then when you get to the underwater dome ship, there's the problem here, I think. Because I've talked about how he puts detail into certain backgrounds. You'd think that the dome ship would be one of the things that he whacks a decent background into. And you know how in the other books you get these, I'm not going to show you because it would be spoiling. I don't want to spoil these. I don't want to spoil any bit from now on. But you get the double page spreads of one big picture where he puts a lot of detail in. I'll show you an example. So from the first graphic novel, you get this double page spread of Elfangor being eaten by the monster. And he put a lot of detail into that. All the like necessary stuff, it's all there and it looks great. In this book, that big spread that we get, it's where the Animorphs see the dome ship. And there's nothing really there. It's just, hold on. There's very little going on. You can't see inside this dome. It just looks like the Eden Project. Considering what he's done in the past, it's a bit underwhelming. Put it that way. And then, of course, we get the axe reveal. Now, I'm not going to show you, but I mean, it's Chris Grine. His characters largely follow similar. Like, all animals have basically the same face, but interchangeable skin or hair. Axe looks like Visser 3, but slightly less crimson chin going on. That's basically Axe. So just picture in your mind what you think Chris Grine's axe looks like, and you're probably exactly right. Not that that's necessarily a bad thing, he looks alright. I just wish that Chris Grine would finally figure out that Andalite eye stalks actually move. I was hoping he would do that in this one with Axe, but alas, Axe's eye stalks, just like Visser 3's and Elfangor's before him, are completely motionless and do nothing. It's a shame. I hope that we see some eye stalk action at some point. But one of the things that I was looking forward to the most when it came to this coming out was seeing what Chris Grine did with the inside of the dome ship. There's very little looking around this Andalite world, and when we do see the Andalite world, it just looks like an earth field with slightly weird shaped trees. That could just be like tropical trees, you know, some weird tropical species of tree. It just looks like a field, and it's underwhelming considering how much detail he put into the apartment buildings behind Marco and Cassie in that scene. The fact that he doesn't apply the same level of detail to the Andalite dome ship, you know, with all this weird crazy stuff in there, like weird trees and plants and rivers. His imagination could have been let wild, but it's like he thought, nah, if I let my imagination go wild, somebody might, I don't know, try to grow those trees themselves? I don't freaking know. But he just doesn't really put any detail into it, which is very strange considering how much detail he puts into things like apartments. I don't understand. I will say though, on a more positive finish, I think he does a good job with Vista 3's Mardrut. I'm happy with how he drew the Mardrut, which is Vista 3's scary alien morph at the end. I think he did a pretty good job with that. And I think that's where a grey gradient actually works better. It works better in this particular scene. Not so much in the previous scenes, but it worked alright here. Oh yeah, and then finally Axe's human morph. It's one of the most grotesque morphs I think we've ever seen, which is very strange. It's quite ghastly. By that I mean Morph Sequence, by the way. I'm not talking about like his actual human morph. The Morph Sequence is pretty ghastly. His human morph itself is, yeah, if you think about the 4 Animorphs there, and you take them halfway, but you take the mean of all of it. Is that the right one? Mean? Or is it median? Maths. If you take the halfway point of all of it, I think it comes across as, yeah, I think that's what he would probably look like. I mean, don't get me wrong, if he'd have done like a sort of weird Paolo Costanzo type look to him, I'd have loved that, but I'm alright with this. I just find it very strange, and I think this is this a reference to something? I'm not going to show you, because that would be spoiling what Axe looks like in human morph, but he wears an orange shirt with a strange bunny logo on it. And it's not like the Playboy bunny or anything like that before you start getting ideas. It looks like a cartoon bunny with a weird cloud-like tail, and it looks very deliberate that it's been designed that way. I'm just wondering if it's like a reference to something. Answers on a postcard, please. One other thing, the final positive point I'll make, and I'll actually find a picture for you on this one. I will sort of spoil this because there are actually 2 of these sequences, and I'll show you one. It looks like Chris Grine has started to put the original book cover ideas into certain parts. So we get a couple of these sections where you see the actual morph sequence in order like they are in the front covers, and I really appreciate that. I really like the look of those, and he's done a cracking job with them. So that is my look at book 4, The Message, without showing you too many pictures so that you don't go buy it yourselves, because you need to go buy this yourself. As much as I've said it's a hit and miss, it's Animorphs, and largely he's done a good job with it, and we need to support everything Animorphs. Go pre-order the paperback, go pre-order the hardback, hardcover, whatever you call it, and just go freaking get it. We now have 4 graphic novels. The next one, The Predator, is gonna come out in August of next year, and I look forward to that one because it's the best of the first 6 books, the ones that we know that he's doing. I do worry that some of my favourite bits will be like in this one, where in the dome ship it's going to be a bit underwhelming, but we'll see. Overall review, I'm certainly happy with like the first third of it. I thought that was great. I feel a bit underwhelmed about the inside of the dome ship because we didn't really see anything apart from like one tree in a green field, basically like an earth field. The underwater sequences, I don't know why he hasn't put the blue tint on everything to make it look more underwater. It's just a white-black gradient on everything, which was a shame. But that's that. I do not regret getting it, and I will also go get the hardcover as well. So I hope you do the same. Go find somewhere to pre-order this, or if you're in Australia, you can go get it right now. If you're wondering how I got this. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you to Chris Grine for further adapting these books and doing a pretty solid job of it. I look forward to the next one, and I hope you do too. Thank you very much for watching somewhere in the Animorphs universe. Ta-ra!